Dr. Gheladewos, welcome to Cyber Power of Tigray. This format interview, I would like to introduce you briefly. You don't need any introduction. However, this is a format that every one of us to put to our respected guests. Dr. Gheladewos Aray is a political scientist and educator by profession and a historian by vocation. He is a graduate from the world famous Columbia University and earned all his degree, including BA, MS, and a doctorate from the same university. He is a prolific writer and has authored many books and 100 articles on Ethiopia, Africa, international studies. He is also a founder and a president of the Institute of Development Education of Africa, IDA. On behalf of the Cyber Power Media, I would like to thank you once more. How are you, Dr. Gheladewos?
I'm very well, Mr. Berket Kiros, and I'm very gratified that we're doing this for the second time. And then we can go ahead. Happy New Year, by the way.
Thank you, and happy Christmas as well.
Yeah, or Christmas.
We don't celebrate as much as we like to.
Yeah.
But nevertheless,
that's okay.
It is a Christmas remembering the plight of our brothers and sisters in Tigray have a different meaning this Christmas, and we hope shocking because of the tragedies that has fallen on those innocent people, victims of war aggression of Yes. Yeah, based on your most recent article entitled Analyzing the Tragic Conflict in Ethiopia and the War in Tigray. And your other contribution, would like to ask you several questions so that our subscribers benefit from your response and learn about the conflict in Ethiopia. And I know it is posted in the website IDEA and also Ethiopian Observer. I personally read it. It is a very rich and a very powerful. It has the basis of the historical incidents, what took place in Ethiopia from your student movement up to this stage. That means 3-4 consecutive regimes. The first question that I like to ask is, you say that conflict in Ethiopia is complex and complicated. What do you mean by that? I'm so curious.
Okay, that's very good. Actually, this question can lead us to more that's happening on the ground in Ethiopia, particularly in Tigray. So what I mean by the conflict in Ethiopia is complicated and complex. Actually, contextually speaking, what I'm trying to say is Ethiopia as a whole is in shambles. The instability is everywhere. There is no such thing as peace. There is war going on in Tigray, but it's not just Tigray. There's also war going on in Benishangul Gumuz, war going on in the Oromia region, especially in Walaga. And infighting is going on as well. So that actually really compounded the problem in Ethiopia. So many skirmishes, major war in Tigray. At the same time, Ethiopia is really, really going down the hill, going down the drain, as a matter of fact. It's very tragic, very unfortunate, but on top of the war going on now in Ethiopia, Sudan also now intervened by way of claiming its territory that used to be part of Ethiopia. It was signed a long time ago between the British and Emperor Menelik. It was not, that dispute was never settled. Now Sudan, I think, wants to use the opportunity while the government of Ethiopia is completely preoccupied with the war in Tigray. So that complicates again, okay? So that's what I mean by complex and complicated. It's not just a war on Tigray. There's so many other things going on in the country.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the thing.
Thank you. If I may have a follow-up, you have also said that the background account is more important in order to make an in-depth analysis of the conflict. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I do this on purpose in many of my writings because people tend to superficially analyze the Ethiopian politics, Ethiopian situation, instead of giving it a background, some historical background to the conflict. Many people think that the war on Tigray that was declared by Abiy Ahmed on November 4, 2020, was the beginning of the war, but that's not the case. As far as I'm concerned, the war against Tigray actually began some 4 years ago when the militia and what have you in the neighboring regional states started blocking the highways to Tigray. When they started attacking Tigrayan people in other regional states in Ethiopia, Oromia and Amhara in particular. When 4 or 5 years ago in Gondar, there was a fight going on between the police and then the so-called militia or whatever in the Gondar area. They call themselves Fano. Then also they attacked Tigrayans and burned property, public property, what have you. Ultimately, there was a problem when in 2018, Abiy Ahmed emerged as a prime minister. It was with the approval of the EPRDF that he came to power. It was a smooth transition between Abiy Ahmed and the former Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn. However, Abiy Ahmed had his own agenda of actually completely abandoning the EPRDF, and ultimately he formed his own party called Prosperity Party. Then there was the contradiction began between the TPLF and the Prosperity Party led by Abiy Ahmed. In fact, the TPLF were completely focused on development agendas and other programs in Tigray. But the two of them were really rivals in many ways. So that background is very crucial because the TPLF was challenging the Abiy Ahmed government for not respecting the constitution, for not allowing rule of law, and for not actually also allowing elections. There's so many of them. That was irritating Abiy Ahmed actually, really. So he was preparing for this all-out war against Tigray for almost 2 years, Unless we understand this background politics to the war in Tigray, actually, we cannot completely understand it. These are the contributing factors that gave rise to the war in Tigray. It was not a simple thing on November 4, not as simple as that. Okay, so this is the whole idea. However, subscribers to our program, to this program, should also understand that Abiy Ahmed was shuttling back and forth to Asmara, befriended the president of Eritrea, Isaias Afwerki, and it was obvious to all of us, although the people did not understand it, they were trying to encircle Tigray. That was the whole idea, that was the whole agenda. Now, they are on the ground, both of them are in Tigray. Eritreans on the northern part of Tigray, the Abiy Ahmed so-called defense forces, mostly in major cities in Tigray and the southern part of Tigray. So this is very important to understand the current situation in Tigray, okay? That's what I mean by background accounts.
Yeah, follow up with the same article, because in your article you cite so many references. One of them is a previously written in 2018 titled "The Accidents of a New Regime and Contradictory Measures in Ethiopian Politics." What do you mean by contradictory measures?
Okay, that's a very good question. Excellent question, as a matter of fact. The article, as you mentioned, was written in 2018, The Ascendance of a New Regime and Contradictory Measures in Ethiopian Politics. Because when Abiy Ahmed came to power in sometime around April 2018, he was accepted by the people, because he was talking about so many things like love and peace and all those things that salutary themes. People were attracted to him, really. After some time, however, after 6 months in power, he began changing. He was talking about love and all those things. All of a sudden, he began saying, I am about to become a dictator. I mean, come on, people have accepted you. Why do you want to be a dictator? That's contradiction by itself. And other contradictions, there were so many of them, talking about the glory of Ethiopia and the great Ethiopian nation, blah, 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 blah. But on some conferences, he said once, I very well remember, that he said Ethiopia is not sovereign. I never heard any leader saying to his own country, it's not sovereign. And the rationale behind, according to him, was Ethiopia is economically dependent. Which country is not dependent? All African nations are dependent on foreign powers, on Western powers, on aid. You can go on and on and on, but they are sovereign nations. Politically, at least, they are sovereign. So actually, that's incredible when I heard that one. And once also he said, we're going to finish the Grand Renaissance Dam. And I said, well, that's fantastic. And then in one meeting, he said, after he came back from his state visit to Egypt from Cairo, he said in one conference, it may take 10 years to complete the dam. Can you imagine these contradictions? It's incredible. And the other contradictions that I have seen is, while communicating with the ordinary Ethiopians, grassroots Ethiopians, at one point I remember very well, one Ethiopian Orthodox Church priest in one meeting with Abiy Ahmed asked that he was really very angry because churches are being burned down to the ground. And although Abiy Ahmed repeatedly said the symbol of Ethiopia, so-called Ethiopia, actually the Orthodox Church, he said we cannot dissociate the Orthodox Church from the Ethiopian nationhood. He said that too. But responding to the press, he said, oh yeah, in fact, this thing is not going to stop. Other churches are going to be burned too. It's going to continue, he said. Other leader, he should have said, actually, he should have said, these things, we're not going to allow these things. We're going to follow, we're going to go after the criminals, and then we're going to stop it. He should have said that. I never heard a leader saying these things are going to continue. There's so many contradictions in what he was talking about. On the one hand, also I said with respect to the federal structure and the the regional states. On the one hand, he said the federal system is going to continue. On the other hand, he was presenting himself as a unifying factor, and the federal system, as a matter of fact, was an impediment to the unity of Ethiopia. How is that possible? How is that possible? That shows you because his associates, other associates, like the former Derg members and like other parties that are in Addis Ababa now, always talk about a unitary state, not a federal state. So indirectly, he was supporting that unitary state theme or agenda. So I can go on and on and on. There's so many contradictions. So, but this would be good enough, I guess, for that question.
I do agree. The euphoria of love and unity was a short-lived. He was a man because that time everybody wants to hear what he knew, what the Ethiopian people wants to hear. And as you know, it was a very short-lived because all those euphoria turned out to be chaos, hate, imprisonment, killing, and typical like a fascist type of a regime. You know, that appear in Second World War in Italy and in Germany. However, coming to the point, you have also critically examined how one regime after another in a modern Ethiopian history attempt to discredit, and I heard it so often, even from the intellectual side, harm the good reputation and disgrace the preceding regime. What is the reason behind all this negativity? I mean, it's just non-stop.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. You know why? Actually, I actually was talking about the negativity in the context of different regimes with Ethiopia from Haile Selassie to present. I have written about it in my book, in my debut book that was published in 1995, and then another book in 2013. I have repeatedly wrote about political culture and the absence of political culture. Actually, political culture ultimately boils down to what we call democracy, to sitting down on a round table and then tolerate ideas. Even those ideas could be opposite to one's ideas. That's political culture. I have written about it 3 times, as a matter of fact. In fact, at one conference, Abiy Ahmed himself, by mentioning my name, he said he is the only one who wrote about political culture. I thank him for that. But I thought he was sincere then. I thought he was going to continue, in fact, allow political culture. Now we've gone the opposite. So what I mean by negativity, however, is more specifically, every regime when it comes to power negates the preceding regime. Completely wipe out the credits that that regime have accomplished. Me, on the contrary, have done. By the way, this is not just the regime or that government or politicians or the elite. Even Ethiopian intellectuals could not produce such a thing, balanced, and then when you evaluate a regime, you give credit to that regime for whatever it does, and then criticize for its failures. But the problem in Ethiopia was just criticize, completely wiping out what the other regime has accomplished. So I supported this by some examples. In my debut book, for instance, I said Emperor Haile Selassie should be credited for expanding elementary and high schools in Ethiopia. Also, but I criticized him for not allowing economic projects that could have uplifted Ethiopians from poverty. He did not do it. He was the longest reigning monarch in Ethiopian history, 44 years in power. But Ethiopia was, as you know, the poorest country in the world when he was overthrown. So I criticized him for that, but for what he did, I have given him credit. The Derg that came after Haile Selassie, the military government, is the most vicious, the most murderous government in Ethiopian history. Even to that Derg government, I gave them credit for initiating some programs, some economic programs, like the Melka Wakena hydroelectric, for instance, in the southern part of Ethiopia, the Beles agricultural project in Gondar, and other things like campaign against illiteracy. That was the Derg's credit I give to. But on the other hand, the Derg actually declared the so-called Red Terror against the Ethiopian people. Thousands upon thousands of Ethiopian intellectuals and youth perished during the Derg. I criticize him for that. I give him credit for whatever initiated. Okay? And when EPRDF came, they were criticizing the Derg. The Derg was completely giving the image of a diabolical king to Haile Selassie. And when the EPRDF came, 27 years in power, they've done so many good things, like infrastructure, like the dam, like railways, like 50 universities. Okay, I have to give them credit. I cannot see myself ignoring those achievements. On the other hand, the EPRDF could not promote democracy in Ethiopia. They also were really, really very weak in terms of imprisoning journalists and what have you, unnecessarily. But they've done their best. Look at Addis Ababa, look at Nazareth, look at Bahar Dar, look at Awasa. These cities actually flourished when EPRDF was in power, predominantly TPLF leadership, of course, as we know. Okay? So, but now, when Abiy came to power, after a few months, they started saying the EPRDF staying power was actually like dark ages. Dark ages, can you imagine? Dark ages. There was a peaceful, most peaceful period in Ethiopian history, 27 years actually, really. So this is the problem. We don't have political culture. We don't tolerate ideas. We don't even understand in how we evaluate the systems by promoting a balanced point of view. This was what I was doing actually myself. But even Ethiopian intellectuals have to be blamed for this. They don't do that. Okay, that's what I mean by that.
It seems to me that, stability and continuity is not part of this legacy because, as you have said, one regime comes, criticize it, discredit it, and it's so hard to build a political culture that gives progress, like the negation of negation in terms of, when you plant a seed, it grows a seed for a fresh start. That's what's happening in Ethiopia. I have one question too. It seems that the Ethiopian affairs never seems to cure. It is always like a rash that never disappears. Why do you think Ethiopia is in shambles and in mess?
Okay, very good. Currently, of course, Ethiopia is in shambles. in mess. I have my own thesis on that, because many people think that it's accidental, it's a lack of leadership. You can come up with so many tons of ideas behind that. My own thesis is this: the mess, the political mess in Ethiopia is done on purpose by the powers that be, on purpose. Because the last 2.5 years, if you are following things on the ground, there were so many instabilities throughout Ethiopia. The government didn't do anything about it. They were not even talking about it on television and what have you. When there was a fight between Somalia and Oromo, nothing was initiated by the government. When there were churches being burned, the government didn't say anything. There was fight between the Benishangul and the Amhara. Nothing was said by the government. It's incredible, as if there was nothing was happening in Ethiopia. So I see actually they wanted them. But the other thing that I actually attribute to the mess is there were so-called armed bands that were attacking people throughout Ethiopia. They call them unknown gunmen. Who are these unknown gunmen? The local people don't know them. The local people say, we don't know these guys. They came and burned our property. They killed our animals, and then they killed some of our loved ones. We don't know these guys. And the pattern is the same. What happened in Jijjiga happened in Debre Marcos. What happened in Debre Marcos happened in Matakal, in Shangul Gumuz. It happened in Oromia region as well. Burning property, attacking people. It's incredible. It's the same thing going on. If the patterns are the same, we were taught in political science, then the forces behind are the same. You see, the guys who did the same thing in Jijjiga and then Debre Marcos, which is way out in Western Ethiopia, it's the same thing. So you have to follow the patterns in order to understand what's going on. So the mess is done on purpose. So they were successful in terms of destabilizing Ethiopia, actually. So relatively, Tigray was the only peaceful regional state. The only regional state that was peaceful was Tigray for at least 2.5 years, 3 years. Okay? Now, in order to destabilize Tigray, they have to wage a war against the regional states. That was the only one. Now, everything is destabilized. Everything is messed up. All Ethiopia is messed up now. So it's highly probable the Ethiopian nation state could be dismembered. It's highly probable because if Tigray is gone, if Tigray is currently, I don't know, they may recover and come back. We cannot talk about it now, but it looks without Tigray, the other things are completely weakened, other regional states. So I am really, really terrified by what is going to happen to that nation state. It looks like we're going to have a problem similar to Yugoslavia and other things in Ethiopia, unless some miracle happens. We don't know.
Yeah, it's already, we are seeing the seed of that destruction.
Yeah.
A government, a regime, well, Abiy Ahmed is not elected by the people. He is a caretaker government. And
Yes.
his mandate is expired. Why is the reason for Abiy Ahmed and his associates to declare war on Tigray? Just so curious. I mean, such brutality and invite outsiders like Somalia, Eritrea, not to mention all those vicious Amhara Fanos and what do you call Fota Alebash, and all those
Yeah.
bandits that they are committing atrocity.
Yeah, that's very true. You see, this actually takes me back to the other question he asked me earlier with respect to contradictory measures. At one point, I remember very well, one journalist was interviewing Abiy Ahmed, and he told him, "Are you guys going to declare war on Tigray?" The response was, "No, we will never do that. No, that is insanity," he said. Insanity. Can you imagine? I remember ثم أبدتنا in Amharic. أبدتنا. Now, they've declared war in Tigray, of course. War is going on in Tigray. However, the reason behind, it seems to me, is they have calculated, Abiy and his associates calculated, Afar is not a problem, Walaita is not a problem, Wallaga, we've almost weakened the Oromia movement or the Oneg, Oromo Liberation Front weakness. The most formidable, most strong regional state is Tigray, which is a challenge to us, to our power, to our status. Therefore, we have to do something about this thing. They have calculated that way. So the thing is that. But on the other hand, he was also terrified by what the leadership in Tigray was talking about, what they were saying. They've told him after 25 September, there is no government in Ethiopia. Your stay in power is going to expire. Okay? They told him that way. There were people, if you remember, like Bakala Garba and like Jawar, like Ledatu, Ayalio, Ledatu. These people also said after 25 September, you're not going to be there. Okay, your term has expired, they told him. He put them behind bars. He could not do that to Dr. Debretzian. The only option he had was to declare war on Tigray. Okay, but the main reason, it seems to me, is so long as Tigray is stable with an organized leadership, I am going to have a problem. So I have to do something about it. He actually probably miscalculated by declaring war on Tigray, because declaring war does not necessarily mean you're going to stay in power forever. Maybe you can elongate your stay in power for some time, but it could be counterproductive as far as I'm concerned, because there are now contradictions all over Ethiopia. The government itself is not going to settle all these problems. Now Tigray, now Afar. With Afar, for instance, they find the struggle has begun with Somali. The Somali forces are attacking the Afar people. We've talked about Benishangul. There is the Oromo things fighting going on still. There is unsettled thing about the Walaita, because they've also asked for self-determination. What are you going to do to all these things? So the government is going to have a problem, a major problem, it seems to me. Okay? But the reason for Tigray was obvious. It was the only powerful, most stable, most peaceful regional state. Therefore, they had to hit. But he also know, although he miscalculated, he knew very well that he could have not done it by himself with the so-called Ethiopian Defense Forces only. So he needed support from Eritrea, from United Arab Emirates, from the Amhara militia. Can you imagine? For the last 2 months, the Tigrayan forces were fighting in all directions, So there's a major war going on. It's very unfortunate anyway.
Yeah, and just going back to, there will not be war. He stated that there will not be war in Tigray. It is like senile. following through his career. This former former prime minister, it is the most pathological liar that I ever met. The
Yeah.
Eritrean troops are not there, and it just confirmed that by his admission and the journalists, they have been robbing, raping,
Yeah.
killing innocent
Yeah.
civilians. They are the most vicious. I think what I am hearing as most of those atrocities is being committed by the Bin Amir, part of the Eritrean nationalities, are the one who are ruthless, that they are inflicting so much pain. To say the least, is that his denial and contempt for the rule of law is he thinks that he can go away easily. I have never seen, a prime minister who lies so often and he thinks he can get away. Going back to our question, when Abiy declared war on Tigray on November 4, 2020, he said that the war on Tigray is going to be short. It will take only 3 days. Contrary to what he said, the war is now raging. It is a protracted war. What is the reason behind? Is that a miscalculation or
Yes. Yeah.
just to, like they say, trying to hold a bull by its horn?
You said it very well. It seems to me that Abiy was going to a surgical operation in Tigray, surgical, just few hours, few days. And he probably had that confidence because Eritrean troops are on his side, United Arab Emirates is on his side, the Amhara militia are on his side, the Somali forces have come to assist him. So he said, with all these forces, we can do it in 3 days. As simple as that. What he did not know is the TPLF also, compared to other regional states, is the most strong force in Ethiopian politics, as a matter of fact, because Tigray had also its own defense force, its own militia, and newly recruited, like thousands of them, combatants as well. Okay, it's not like other regional states. That's why 3 days extended to 2 months now, as you can see. So actually, he miscalculated for sure. He miscalculated. He knows very well now. Now they don't know what to say. In fact, people have begun asking now that last two days, they've been saying, now we're done. Mekelle is occupied, Adigrat is occupied, Shire is occupied, the major cities are under our control. We put a new administration, Tigrayan speakers, new administration. So we are in control. Now, what we're doing now is, they say, we're hunting down the TPLF leadership. Okay? But people have begun to ask now, why? You've said that many times. Where are they? Where are the leadership of Tigray? Where are the TPLF leadership? Why can't you apprehend one of them? So they came up with a new thing today and yesterday. We have apprehended some of them. We've captured some of them. We have killed some of them. That's not verified yet, because they have to say that. They have to say that, okay? So I think they're going to be in trouble with respect to Tigray. They cannot completely take over the whole of Tigray because the militia are going to continue fighting. So they're going to be a problem. They're going to be a problem. That's how I see it for that, actually, really.
Thank you. Since November 4, people of Tigray, Tagaru, has been bombed.
Mm.
Industry has been looted. The board. All property has been confiscated,
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
private or state-owned. What is your assessment of the loss of lives, destruction, and the property and institution like universities of Adigrat?
Yeah.
Just to mention few, and also some of the you know uh, research centers for animal
Institutions.
and crops of Makala, part of Makala University. And those are, I mean, as an educator yourself, those research materials are a product of many years of scientific findings.
Yeah.
Do you see this?
That's a good question. I mean, it's really, really sad. It's a very sad affair, what's going on in the war in Tigray. They said actually they are after the TPLF. Now it's abundantly clear that they're not really after the TPLF only. They are about the Tigrayan people. They've destroyed their property, killing them, massacring them. They not only destroy institutions of learning, they also destroy churches and mosques. The Al-Najashi church and Najashi mosque was actually hit hard. And then there is in the vicinity of the Al-Najashi, there is a church known as Amaniel. They hit that Amaniel church as well with
Some of the followers.
Artillery. That was done by Sha'abiyah, by the way, by the EPLF. However, Ethiopian television said last time, I remember a couple of years ago, couple of days ago, they said the TPLF was there. And the TPLF did it. Everything that's done in Ethiopia, even in Wallaga, is the TPLF behind. One of Abiy Ahmed's associates, the so-called Abraham, head of innovation, what have you. He went to Adigrat and he said to the people, the TPLF actually put bombs in the pharmacy, in that pharmacy in Adigrat. The people know very well that the EPLF came and destroyed that pharmaceutical industry. They looted everything they found in the pharmaceutical industry. They took all necessary laboratory equipment and computers and what have you from Adigrat University, and they destroyed the university. They are very destructive, very destructive. They've done it. The textile industry in Adwa was also destroyed after taking the property. They came with trucks, as a matter of fact. The trucks were taking all this property that belonged to Tigray, to Asmara.
And trained professional mechanics to dismantle.
Absolutely. And if you remember early on, when the war started, Abiy Ahmed said to the people of Ma'ale, "We are coming, I'm going to bombard you." I never heard of such a thing in my entire life. Get out from the city. Where are they going to go? And although they didn't bombard the whole city, they bombarded Ma'ale University, they bombarded St. George's Church, and in Diaspora. They bombarded so many farms in the vicinity of Maqale. There's so many things they've done actually, and then not to mention the United Arab Emirates bombardment of in Tambien, 2 times, 3 times, and more than that actually. The Air Force, the Ethiopian Air Force, were bombarding everywhere. Some of them were shot down and captured. We all know that. So it's a wholesale attack against the people of Tigray and their property. Destroy, 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 destroy. That's the whole agenda, actually. They don't care. On the other hand, Mekelle University is a federally owned institution. Why would they bombard it? Some students were injured, one student died. And Hadigrat University, the same thing. It's a federally owned thing. So they were actually completely with a destructive agenda. And it seems to me they wanted Tigray not to be an example or exemplar to other Ethiopian regional states. So you're going to start from scratch now. If we recover, and we're going to recover for sure, we're going to start from scratch. You have to rebuild those universities. You have to rebuild those textile industries. You have to rebuild so many things, infrastructure and farms and what have you. They're very destructive. Okay?
Can we rebuild those industries and institutions, but we cannot rebuild the lives of our destitute
Absolutely,
people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just coming back in the light of all those difficulties that you have talked about, we, Tegaru, in diaspora, what is our role in order to reach out the displaced Tegaru and also assure victory to Tigrayan people? I need you to shed some highlights to assure victory and also at the same time to help the displaced Tegaru in diaspora, Tegaru in Tigray and out of Tigray in Sudan and other areas.
Okay. I think the Tegaru in Tigray, they can't do much because they are afraid for their lives. But the Tegaru in the diaspora can really do a lot of things. And you, Bereket Kiros, you know it very well. You yourself are involved in community affairs and what have you. You and I are involved in the Tigray Global Advocacy Group. So Tigrayans are actually really, I'm very proud of this, my people, my Tigray people, because you know why? Even today, there was worldwide demonstration everywhere, okay? Wherever you go, the major cities, there were, and this has been going on for almost 2 months now, demonstrations against the war in Tigray. And as you very well know, the Tigray Global Advocacy Group has contacted Congress people, senators, major international institutions like the United Nations, the European Union, the African Union, you can go on and on and on. And now as of recent, because the people are trapped now, some 2 million people in Tigray are trapped. I mean, the famine is on the horizon. It's looming famine that can actually kill thousands of people because they are not getting food supplies, water, electricity, medicine. You can go on and on and on. So the other tasks that we are supposed to do, the Tigrayan diaspora has to do, is contact international relief organizations. There are many of them. The United Nations itself has a relief organization. There is the Catholic Services. There are so many of them. People can be contacted, and those organizations can say, we have to go to Tigray to relieve those people who are in need of the essential things we're talking about now, like food and medicine and water. Okay? So this should be the major agenda now for Tigrayan diaspora people, because it's possible to also fundraise and send money, but it's not going to happen because the banks are closed. even where some people had access to banks, they can take out a certain amount of money only. That's all. So that's not going to work. The thing that is going to work is on two fronts, actually, the diaspora Tigrayans on two fronts. On the political front, contacting the governments everywhere. The French government, the British government, the United States government. I personally am waiting for Biden to come in on January 20th. We have done a good job with respect to Biden and his secretaries. As a matter of fact, I was personally connected in the campaign during the elections I'm talking about with the Biden thing. And as a result, Biden condemned the war in Tigray. His Secretary of State condemned the war in Tigray, and the National Security Advisor condemned the war in Tigray. That's giving me some hope now. Once Biden is in, they're going to be involved. They're going to pressurize the government in Ethiopia that's sitting in Arat Kilo and then just doing war only, okay? So this is our thing. On the other thing, there are so many activists to grants all over. Those activists are contributing a lot, exposing the regime's atrocities in Tigray. All those things, those are important as well, okay? This is what we can do so far, I guess.
What about in terms of ushering victory? What we should? This is on the humanitarian side of the people.
Yeah.
Any prospectus and idea, and know something that we should not, discuss the strategy and tactics, whatnot. But some thoughts, because personally, the prolonging of the war, it is a more misery to our people. The way things are going right now.
Yeah, but anyway, diaspora, by the way, the diaspora Tigrayan thing, although very important in terms of promoting the Tigrayan interests and by extension, Ethiopian interests. The determining factor is the internal dynamic in Tigray, the role of the TPLF and the militia in Tigray, okay? That's the determining factor. So we can encourage them in many, many ways, by finance, by giving them some morale, etc., etc. But they are the ones who are going to decide the outcome of the war, ultimately. It seems to me it's going to change after a while. But the other thing that I should really, as a matter of strategy, and by way of advice, I mean, it could be, this advice could be a 2-penny words advice, but it's important. Tigray should not fight the war alone. The TPLF, the Tigrayan people, the combatants on the ground should really extend the war to other parts of Ethiopia. Okay? They have to connect themselves with the Afar people. Although the so-called president of Afar now is in good terms with Abiy Ahmed, the majority of Afar people sympathize with Tigray. The majority of Benishangul people sympathize with Tigray. Oromo, especially the OLF people, really appreciate and admire the contribution of Tigray in the self-determination of the Oromo people. They know that very well. So Tigrayan people have to connect themselves with the Oromos too, if possible with Walaita and others too. Because ultimately the burden should not be on Tigray only. The burden should be for all Ethiopians. They have to come together, strategize, unite, and then ultimately change is going to come. This is my wish, and that's what I think is going to work very well.
Thank you. And I like to mention the role of the youth, the new generation on the social media, to highlight the predicament of or the plight of Tigrayans is just remarkable. I mean, it's just quite amazing. I wish we had invested so much on them, 5, 10 years ago. We could have seen the productivity in terms of spinning on social media like Twitter, Facebook. I think they have been a voice for the voiceless. And I see it in Seattle, and I see it elsewhere in Europe and North America. I just want to stress to the fact that we are proud to have those our kids to be in the front for this effort on social media. I couldn't be proud of that.
Okay.
Last but not least, I want you to tell me, or do you think the conflict in Ethiopia and in war in Tigray are going to end soon, and conflicting parties will come to the table? Kind of a too late, but what do you think?
Okay, that's a good one. I mean, as you very well know, everything in the world, in the universe, has a beginning and an end. The so-called politics now, war politics, conflict in Ethiopia is going to end as well. It's going to end, but I'm not gonna say soon. It's not going to end soon. It is going to end, but not very soon. With respect to the combatants, the fighting forces coming to a round table, that's my biggest wish, I'm telling you. Because ultimately, like I said early on, with respect to political culture, if we end up in a negotiating table, that's going to be fantastic. But it's not going to happen soon also. That one will take some time. But maybe now, if the balance of power shifts in Tigray, then other intervening forces, international, I mean, United Nations or the United States, whatever, then Abiy Ahmed is going to be forced to negotiate. He's not going to have a choice, as a matter of fact, because the war in Tigray is protracted already. It's going to take a long time to really completely stop the war. It's going to continue forever. So at one point, he will be forced to come to a negotiating table. Okay? So a combination of internal dynamics in Ethiopia and of course, pressurizing governments like the European and the United States. So it's going to come to an end for sure, but it's not going to be very soon. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Gheladewos. On behalf of Cyberpower of Tigray and my gratitude to Cyberpower of Tigray, honor Ephraim Mesfin, a lighting rod, and he been a voice for voiceless, and we wish him good luck. And thank you for his selfless effort to voice the concern of Tigrayans around the globe. Thank you.
I thank you too, Bereket Kiros, for conducting this wonderful, wonderful interview and for giving me an opportunity to express myself, my ideas and my thoughts. And of course, I like to thank Ephraim as well, Ephraim of Cyberpower of Tigray. And then we should really, really continue doing these things, by the way.
Absolutely.